Dr. Richard Allen Miller is my next guest. Author and researcher Dr. Richard Allen Miller reveals an in-depth knowledge and experience in the alternative agricultural physics and metaphysics. Miller began working with the secret world of Navy Intel, the SEAL Corporation, and MRU in the late 60s, and now has amazing experiences and conclusions to share. His writings reveal a depth of knowledge and experience in three major fields: alternative agricultural, physics, and metaphysics. Excuse me, guys, I'm all geeked up from the last hour. Before many leading-edge concepts become trendy topics. Welcome, Dr. Miller. It's so good to have you on with me. I'm excited about having you on. I want to ask you some stuff about biophysics and the energy fields that we're in.
Yes. Good morning. I haven't met you yet. What is your name?
I'm sorry. I'm Ted Brown. I've been doing radio and TV for about 35 years. I write books on health and physics and fitness and all the different things that we talk about on the show. And it's so good to have you on today. And I apologize for bringing you into the back of an hour.
Yeah, that's
so hot.
I'll straighten out. I'm a polymath, so I'm limber.
Okay, good. But what do you want to talk today, Doc? What do you want to talk about?
Well,
go ahead and calm down, take a deep breath, and drink some water.
My control. However, what I've been talking, the two major things I've been talking about is how do I begin this? It's like sustainable lifeboats and the day after tomorrow. And most of everything that you guys have been talking about are basically false flags. Look, children, over here, ISIS is beheading people. Look, children, over there, money is about to hit a brick wall. Yes, of course, these are all important issues to discuss, but in fact, as a scientist, I would be remiss if I did not mention Fukushima, and if we had a day after tomorrow, what happens to all those nuclear reactors that need electric current if the grid were go down? There's now talk in Japan about the fact that there were more meltdowns across that country than were mentioned to the public. And when you realize that it's the Yakuza that is doing cleanup, I mean, where does that go? Germany has been doing the cleanup for Europe for more than 20 years. And where do they put their nuclear waste? Africa. And that's where you think you have. Did you know that the symptoms for radiation sickness is exactly the same as Ebola? Now, I don't know what's going on, and my pay grade certainly does not allow me access to the 1 cent and what they're doing right now. Bugging out, bugging in, whatever.
Okay, we were talking, or I was talking to Coach to Dr. Richard Allen Miller just a second ago during the break. I want him to talk about Judy Wood's research on particle beam weaponry and what she felt was used to bring the trade towers down. This is controversial. Some people believe that we had thermite used. Some people believe that we had energy beam weapons used. Some people believe that we had mini nukes used. Doc, what do you believe happened with those towers? How were they brought down, and how were they brought down so quickly, and how did Building 7 come down?
Well, I don't know for a fact. However, I don't know. I'm a physicist and was used since the 60s to put us together, and with my pay grade right now, I'll never know, really. However, thermite and jet fuel do not that hot enough physics to melt and slag concrete. And there's only one thing in the world that will dissolve a 617-foot steel beam as it falls and dissolves into nothing. That's a plasma. Okay, so we know that something new has happened here. It's not conventional, and it certainly was not an airplane and brought those buildings down. It was controlled demolition. The purpose, again, false flags. We'll never know. To get a terrorism bill through Congress? Yes. To experiment on a new weapon? Probably. To do both and have a low body count? They did. That's okay. I watched the police chief of New York City ripped at the buddies that he lost in a situation that was a controlled demolition. And these guys were running into those buildings to try to save lives with no warning that the whole thing was not about that. Now, somebody is going to have to be accountable for that at some point. And there will be Nuremberg trials, of course, presuming we survive what we will call a near extinction event about to happen on Earth. And that's
okay. What do you got to go into detail? You can't let me hang on a near extinction event. Let's hit that and go back to the trade violence. What's the near extinction event that you think is going to happen?
That kind of thing right now is what is a false flag. What do you think geoengineering is about? You know, it exists. You can say it. Okay, what is it about? And the planes that are doing Southern Oregon down here are coming out of Chilliwack, Canada. So guess what? That's the United Nations project, isn't it? So with that said, I mean, the American public is ill-informed, complacent. There's your mind control. Listen, people know that it's wrong, and yet are not doing anything about it. How's that work?
Are you saying that the chemtrails are an extinction level event, or are you saying they're a precipitant of something else that's about to happen?
They are trying to stall an event that should have happened earlier. Desalinization of the sea, GOR, global warming. There's global warming on both the sun and Pluto. NASA just came out yesterday talking about the seasons on the sun and how they're changing. There is an object coming in off of ecliptic out near Neptune that made the front pages of Science Digest, Science News last month, Planet X. We don't know what it is, but it's absolutely affecting our sun. Matt Stein talks about a coronal mass ejection that will drop the grid. That's just the beginning. Listen, the whole problem is that someone thinks that not telling you is for your own good. And nobody's as smart as me. I am a polymath. And nobody's telling me what's about to happen. How is it that someone has the right to make judgment on what I need to know?
Okay, Doc, we got to try to stay together on our thought train here. So you're saying are you talking about Planet X Nibiru that we've heard about for the past 40 years? Are you talking about another object? What are you talking about that's coming in on this orbit?
I don't know. Nobody knows. The perturbations in both Neptune and Uranus and Pluto are now showing an object. It's a mathematical thing that you can show that there's something out there coming in. It's small. It's probably, NASA says, about 5.5 times the size of Earth, but it's heavier, probably nickel. I don't know. What we do know is the sun's heating up. And the coronal mass ejections that we're getting now are going to take the grid out. We had a kill shot less than 2 months ago when a plasma filament went off in the opposite direction of the sun, and the Earth lucked out. Now, we would have been back to the Stone Age. Oh, wait. There are historical documents of this event occurring 3,600 years ago. That's the Cultus culture in Peru actually show the sun burping. They have a drawing of it. There it is. And anthropology has known about this for more than 200 years.
Okay, now is this why they're building the deep underground military bases, Doc?
That's because all of this is related to the day after tomorrow.
So what you're saying, we got two things. We got an object coming in that's made of nickel, and we've got coronal mass ejections occurring with the planet. So do you have any type of timeline? Because Bob Fletcher is saying that he thinks something's going to happen next spring. But everybody's been hearing about this planet Nibiru since the 70s and 80s, and everybody keeps saying what's going to happen now. It's going to happen now. It never seems to happen.
That is. It's about the fact that the sun and what its activities do have an absolute effect on life on Earth. And what's happening now is that less than 4 days ago, Antarctica was at 64 degrees. It was in the media. And ice in Greenland is melting their polar caps. Okay, that means we're having a desalinization of the sea. It's happening right now. And as a result, chemtrails, geoengineering, is trying to stave off while we buy a little extra time to get further underground. Because when that occurs and the Gulf Stream and Gulf currents change, and they are, okay, that means a mini ice age, just like in the movie. And it's going to drop 10 degrees every second until it reaches temperatures approaching that of the planet Mars. Now, it won't last. It's a mini ice age. You're going to have frost lines. You're going to go to 10 feet down as far as Texas. It's going to be just like in the movie where smart money now is moving to Costa Rica. Listen, you guys are all smart enough to realize there's something wrong going on here. And the media is absolutely owned by, what do they call them now? International corporations. Companies that are so big, they are, like one company is 40 times the national gross product of the United States. Now, with that means there's money going on elsewhere. And we are not being told anything. Alternative radio has so much disinformation out there. Listen, I am the physicist that's trying to tell you none of us are being told what's really happening. And for a fact, I have a stinking suspicion that it is a near extinction event and that there's nothing you can do about it anyway. So there's opportunities here for empowerment and to raise the level of consciousness in mankind. You know, I taught Navy SEALs how to change the perception of time with breath. Where do you think that training might be able to go? You know, so their boxing was like verging on paranormal. There's start with didgeridoos, and there's techniques you can do. That's
hang on, let's go ahead. So you don't have any timelines as far as this object?
Yes, I do. I have NASA, who has put out the War After Next, the future weapon of war. It has a timeline, and by 2050 there won't be anything human. It'll be humanism and the Avatar program. We already have an Avatar 1. So there it is. You know that. That's what NASA's saying. That's where all your money's going, is this massive collection of how to survive. What do you think? We're already on Mars, never interested in the moon. Complications in getting there. Wanting artifacts from previous civilizations like Atlantis and Greece. That's what we're about right now, and because we're in that stage, we have a fiduciary responsibility of teaching those that can be a survivor, not the 1%ers. That's a weird gene pool. Imagine where that goes. Greed.
Okay. We got. First of all, let's jump back to particle beam weapons and the space platform. And if you think Judy Wood was right in her assessment of a particle beam weapon was used to bring down the trade towers in combination with thermite and perhaps a nuclear mini nuke. I mean, what do you think brought those things down? What's your speculation as a physicist?
I wrote a technical paper on that for Nexus magazine that's in print, and it's called the Neutron Fullerene Fusion Bomb. And basically, you form a buckyball with exclusion zone water inside it, and you ignite it with a teleportation laser from Lockheed. It's got all the patents on the internet.
How do you explain that vehicles burst into flames a mile away from the trade towers at the time these towers were coming down? Judy says it was from that beam weapon that was used. How do you explain that?
Yeah, her position is that it is a ray gun kind of event, like John Hutchinson. She talks about John Hutchinson. We'll pick that up later.
Okay, we'll pick it up and come back with the break. You guys stay tuned for this fascinating discussion on world events. You want to ask him about Nibiru, you want to ask him about Judy Wood, you want to ask him about Planet X, you want to ask him about the coming stock market crash. You feel free. We're going to go wherever you guys want to go with the second half of this show as far as with conversations you want to have with Dr. Miller. But Dr. Miller, you're saying now that they use a neutron bomb to take the buildings down is what you feel as they did?
Yeah, it's a carbon nanofiber. We've had breakthrough technology, and it's a carbon nanotube that they use that are making the space elevator.
How did that take the building down?
Okay, they're making it I'm sorry?
Okay, Doc, I don't understand. How does it take the building down with carbon nanotubes?
They probably were injector laid on the sides of them before the event and triggered with a laser from space.
Okay, well, you're above
Hutchinson,
now. Okay, so you don't think that Judy Wood's material is 100% accurate then? So you think it was a combination of advanced...
She will say right up front she doesn't really know. That's why she was proposing that it might be... that it's a weapon that yet, or any of us, know about. That weapon, by the way, existed with the Mossad. They gave it to the United States. I don't think the Mossad was involved with 9/11, but I know they knew about it. And the whole research took place at Carnegie Mellon and Lockheed in California with Livermore. And they've got a laser now that teleports, which is primarily used for communication. You don't need encryption, It basically bends space-time. We have a magnetic monopole that does that. There are technologies out there right now being implemented that the public has no clue.
Okay, you told me that some major think tank group has come up with a projection of a major stock market crash in August with a 99.9975 accuracy. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I'll say too on his act, that's using a form of On's algebra, and they've been pretty accurate, and they're saying a group of banks will fail in August. Not the Federal Reserve, probably, but other small banks like savings and loan. And it will affect people with all of their CDs and IRAs and whatever that are not covered. And so, heads up.
All right, well, we've been expecting that. We don't know if it'll happen this summer.
And I don't know
everyone's been saying 2015 is going to be a year of transition.
I do know having the conference. What's that?
We all know that 2015 is going to be a volatile year in the markets.
Well, hang on, it's going to be a bumpy ride, I believe is the way the movie ends.
Okay, so you think the scenario of the day after tomorrow in which we have global ice caps and global cooling is going to happen, and that's why they're moving into their deep underground bunkers and building them as fast as they can, but you don't have a timeline, but you think by 2017, 2020, it's going to be done as far as some type of extinction level.
If you don't have a sustainable lifeboat, a sustainable lifeboat.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Are you talking about aquaculture? Or are you talking about being in an area that's not going to be below zero?
If there's an ice age, you're going to have frost lines 10 feet. When the snow finally melts 2 years later, you're going to find there's no seed that is viable in the soil, and there's no organisms. It's the sand of Mars. It'll be like that. It'll be done to it. Now, there will be places where it lives, where the jungles are now. That's the best guesses. However, a volcano has so much more pollution than anything you could imagine. I was and lived up near Mount St. Helens when it went off. I was there. I've seen what that's about. So with that, and the next 5 years, 5 inches of powdered sand that God gave man as a new soil up near Spokane. And so with that, there's going to be some changes on Earth, literally. There's going to be a lot of people that don't make it, probably. And there's no way. There's 2 million people a week being born on Earth. 2 million each week more in raising our population. What's wrong with that? Where is that going to go? Especially if we're on a spaceship with limited resources. We don't have an instruction manual on how to run it, and our people tinkering with life support. And then there are skirmishes in every part. That's a NASA direct quote from NASA's document.
Okay, hang on 1 second, Doc. We'll be right back at the bottom of the hour. We'll be back with Dr. Miller in just a few moments. Okay. And you're a physicist, Doc, and you worked at a lot of for a lot of defense contractors. You helped train the Navy SEALs. You did a lot of things back in the 70s and 80s, and probably some of the things you're still not supposed to talk about. And so it's kind of interesting when we actually get somebody who's been on the front lines on the show with us talking about these different types of secret black ops budgets and what's actually happening and how they're using all of this vast resource that they've taken from and stripped from the American population, building deep underground military bases, which we're all aware of. So let's go right to the phones. If you guys have a phone or question or call, give me a call this morning. Power Hour, 855-995-6923. If you want to speak to Dr. Richard Allen Miller, he'll answer your questions. We're going to go with the phone call this morning. That's what Dr. Miller's requested to do, so we're going to let you guys kind of direct the show on where you want to go. Wes, you are live from Idaho. Wes in Idaho. Go ahead. You got a question for Dr. Miller.
Yes, more about how the towers were taken down. Do you guys know of Dr. Alan Sprowski, former director of the United States Army War College, and Christopher Bolin and Victor Thorne, who are both researchers on the issue? They all three of them come to the same conclusion as to who did 911. Are you guys familiar with them?
What is their conclusion there, Wes? What do they say happened? Who do they say did it?
The dancing Israelis, you know about them as well?
I've heard about them. We saw them on TV. We saw that.
Isn't that pretty good evidence as to who knew who did 911?
I think I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. What I do know is the weapon that I think was deployed was originally a Mossad weapon that had been used in Gaza and the Golan Heights and Baghdad Airport, and they were very similar. They're different than a tactical nuke, which most people think is what slagged the concrete on Building 7. However, that steel beam that remained, when it started to dissolve, that is not a thermonuclear tactical nuke. That's plasma. That means that it's a new weapon. There it is. And there is the evidence. Now, moving forward, what could it be? Well, the patents didn't come out until 2008, but I'm guessing the Mossad had technology that they then gave. I just started noticing I would be cutting out again. I started getting animated. That's what makes me cut out. I'll try to hold my fervor here. The Mossad gave this weapon to the United States. It was studied at the National Ignition Facility in Livermore. You can do a Google on them, and there they'll come up. And what they were doing is trying to do a fusion bomb using deuterium and tritium. And what they do is they put a structure around it that can contain that kind of energy. And there's only one thing in the universe that does that we know of now. It is an allotrope of carbon called fullerenes. It's 100 times stronger than diamond, which is another allotrope of carbon. It is a special form of carbon and does unusual things when put in different forms.
Okay, so you're saying they put some type of carbon-based containment facility around the major towers that came down so they could use their weapons.
It's a 1.4 nanometer. It's a very small, 10 to the minus 9 meters. It's a 1.4 nanometer structure, and then they form carbon nanotubes with it. Like you're in your body and your nanotubes there, which are called, they're nanotubes. And it's a new transport system in the body that we now are beginning to understand. It came out when I worked at the University of Washington in the 70s under John Vanica, way before Hameroff existed. They were doing the studies for Richard Nixon on acupuncture. I was part of those studies.
Okay. Wes in Idaho, any other comments, Wes?
Well, I think anyone that is not directing the question as to who did 911 has got to be running a protection racket. I mean, it's more important for me to know who did.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was our government that did it. and I'm guessing with full knowledge of collateral damage to people inside the building. I noted there's a lot of evidence that would indicate that the powers to be vacated like rats just before the event occurred. That all is out there, and you can read about it. I think the probable first cause was to get a terrorism bill through Congress. Certainly,
I personally think what I think, Doc, is I think that the United States government had agents in the government. I don't think it was the congressmen and the senators that we know about that did this. I think that we have hostile agents that have taken over the government through the Federal Reserve Bank, through the Rothschild banking cartel. They were directly involved in getting all of this done and getting it promoted because they're the ones with the money and doing stuff. That's where I think the whole thing reeks back down to. Cecil in Tennessee, you've got a question for Dr. Miller. Cecil in Tennessee, you're live on the air with the Power Hour.
Dr. Miller, the Avebury 2008 crop circle indicated that there would be an explosion or a nova of the sun as this object came into the nearer areas of the inner solar system. And
okay, so that specific one was a type of cymatics. That is resonant physics, cavity oscillations, where a sound wave of some kind would go across and cause a harmonics like you do with a bowl of water, and you chant across it. And if you do the chant correctly, you create sacred geometry. That geometry that we're talking about is also found by the Cultus culture up in Peru. And that what it basically was suggesting is the sun is going to come off with a mini burp that will create all the ice melting on the earth. It's already got global warming. It was 64 in Antarctica 2 days ago. What do you think that's doing to the ice shelf? Now, what the seas are rising. The Day After Tomorrow movie is possibly the most accurate science in science fiction today, including Interstellar and Five Space. And so with that, Akashic Records, I don't know how archetypally there are schisms happening in consciousness with alien abduction, targeted individuals that may or not be actually, that's what's happening. It is that's the way we can comprehend something we have no concept of yet.
Okay. Hey, 1 second. Let's go back to what Cecil said. Cecil, you're saying there were crop circles which through sacred geometry were developed through sound, and they had a message in the crop circle that this was going to happen. Did this crop circle give a date, Cecil, as to when this was going to happen, or was it just a warning? The crop circle shows an alignment of the planets. It was very similar to 2012 in the Mayan Day of Destiny, except it was off a little bit with regard to the position of Pluto. I don't know when this will happen, but it will last for like 3 years and 11 months and a couple of days, according to subsequent crop circles, which are by interpretation. I don't disagree with anything scientific that either you gentlemen are saying, but I'm going along with Dr. Brower on this, that it's the message, not necessarily the medium, as someone said. And the message is you better repent, people, because the judgment of the Almighty God is there, and it says so in a little prolific symbol of the 5 symbols at the bottom of the crop circle, which show a scale of balance, then a serpent, and then a dove, and then the object that Saturn is, which in Akashic matters, I suppose, is Septimus or Hell, the bad place. And the other place is a spiral galaxy, which is Arcturus, apparently from the Casey material. Cecil, forgive me for interrupting you, but what is the name of this crop circle? I think by now we've got everybody's interest peaked. We all want to look it up on YouTube. What is the name of this crop circle that's giving us all this information? I'm personally writing this down right now.
Avebury, that's Avebury, I believe is the approximation of the name. Avebury, 2008.
Yeah, it's in Aubrey. It's in Aubrey, England. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, great. Cecil, thank you so much. I've got to go to some phone call calls. Thank you for the great call. Francis in North Carolina, you're on the air. Your question for Dr. Miller.
Hey, folks. Just to tweak into a different direction, my question is this. How are folks that have blood types O positive and O negative different, if at all, compared to others?
That's right. That's a good question. Okay. So rhesus negative. So rhesus negative is an unknown genome blood type. 4 blood types that now make Homo sapiens sapiens. And we don't know where it came from. If I were an alien, for example, that might be a good place to hide, and the battle for Earth is going on inside each of us as a metaphor for archetypal encounters. Now, the blood types of rhesus negative, which is now in everybody, not O negative and O positive. It was rhesus negative with the O system. We have no idea where that genome came from. And O is known, but not rhesus negative. And when that said, where did it come from? That's like pie. Possibly we were manufactured. That's one metaphor. It's a metaphor because there's something more going on here. When I came out of graduate school, I knew physics was not giving me my answers. Where'd he go? So I studied 6 years with Gershom Scholem. I did my translations with Old Hebrew and Greek, and going into the old Bibles and doing my own translations. I am a Hermetic Kabbalist. And I can tell you, I didn't find answers there either, by the way. However, what I did find is the idea of the Book of Formation, Sefer Sephirah, which relates sound to words. There's Gabriel. And the way I understand it, I'm a physicist. I have to have a physical representation before I can go off into other planes. That's what we call holographic. And I don't have these answers. What I know is there's something more going on, and we are basically, how did Joseph Campbell put it? Yes, he said, when you see the kingdom of the Father on earth, the apocalypse has already occurred. It is perpetual in its potential. It is part of the length, girth, and width of what we are. And so there will always be this apocalypse as part of our what's going to happen kind of thing, survival circuit, if you will. And with that said,
let's go to the next phone call real quick if we can. Steve in Illinois, you got a question for Dr. Miller?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about calcium? Is that all right from the first hour?
Sure, go ahead.
You were talking about taking calcium supplementation. Is there a best calcium to take?
Yeah, what I always tell people, they want to try to increase calcium levels if they can find it locally, if it's legal for them to buy in their area, is raw certified goat's milk that's been raised without a bunch of GMO feed. That's a really good source of calcium. I personally recommend that men absolutely never take calcium supplements because of the increased risks of cardiovascular disease from it. But the raw certified goat's milk is okay. But remember, men don't need very much calcium. I also recommend that women use the raw certified goat's milk for a calcium supplement. They avoid calcium supplements too, Steve.
Dogs eat bones. Dogs get it from bones. You can do bone meal. There's all kinds of things you could be doing for calcium.
Let's go to Sherry in Kansas. You got a question for Dr. Miller. Go ahead, Sherry.
Hello, guys. Dr. Miller, do you know anything about a certain alignment that's supposed to happen on September 23rd in 2017? I've heard it relayed to certain Bible
biblical, references. I have researched that a little. I don't have the tools to be able to do it I don't have a lab. That's what it needs, to some computer crunch. As far as biblical, I had a friend here last week before I went to Lebanon that was out shooting a ring around the sun when she looked on her camera and there was up to one level a little dot, and she exposed it up and it was a fish. Now, I didn't know, a fish falling from the sky. I looked for an osprey. There was nothing around. So where did that fish come from? There was no context of how big a fish it was. It's on my Facebook page. I was there when she did that. Biblical is all about us. And right now, the Colburn Bible, the ones that Revelations and other those are based on, is a free download. There's different translations. What is happening now is a recurring system. It's happened before. It will happen again. We're witnessing it now.
So you're saying the Earth is going through a rebirth, a recurring system, and then which the population is going to be...
Well, the ocean currents are certainly going to reboot. That's happening right now. Pole shift, crustal pole shift towards Siberia, that's happening right now. The ring of fire is ringing with fire, and that will be a coastal landmass change. If you go future maps of the world, Chet Snow, that's the one the military uses as worst case scenario. There it is with Yellowstone and all of it. The United States is cut in half.
Okay, thanks for the call, Sherry. Okay, let's go to Janelle in California. Janelle in California, you got a question for Dr. Miller. Go ahead.
Well, nobody was talking about Rebecca Ross yet, so I guess it was up to me to call in. I agree with the caller earlier that said it's Israel. Did you know that there is a rabbi at the comptroller at the Pentagon? Ted, did you hear Rebecca Ross with Joyce last week?
I did not, Janelle. I apologize.
She has written a book called Methodical Illusion. And since her book came out and she's been doing interviews, she was a 30-year international flight attendant, and she has tracked it down.
Okay, Methodical Illusion is the name of the book.
And I hope both of you will look into it. She's got a website. Just type in Methodical Illusion. I've ordered my book. She's been on tons of interviews. She was on the Hagman and Hagman Report. That might be a good one to catch on YouTube.
Yeah,
so
there's a question I have on the difference between Zionist and Jew.
Absolutely, I know all about that.
You can go to richardallenmiller.com, and that will take you to oak-publishing.com. I have a lot of other websites. They're not
okay.
important.
Let's go back. Let's go back to the phone call here with Janelle. Janelle, go ahead and ask your question again to Dr. Miller, so we can. Or you wanted to make a statement between the difference between Judaism and Zionism. Go ahead, Janelle. I want to hear what you got to say about this.
Well, there's even more than a difference between Jews and Zionism. What I'm talking about is what Dr. Bill Deagle talks about all the time, and that's the Sabbatean Frankist Jews who are Satanists.
That's correct. Now,
Satanism only occurs in Christianity. I've taught comparative religion at Harvard, and you have to understand, Satanism only occurred with the Church of Rome. If you look at any other religions in history, none of them, they have devils, but they don't have someone that's equal to God and at war with God. God is not at war with anyone.
As Alex Jones says, whether you believe in Satan or not, they do.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Hey, Doc,
you will structure water in that regard.
Miller, one second. I've got to agree with Janelle on this one. I believe that Deagle's right. I also know that Dr. Henry Macau has gone into detail on his Illuminati 1, 2, and 3 on the Sabbatean Frankist. And Janelle, I agree with you 100% on this, and you are absolutely right. They do worship what they consider to be Lucifer, whether or not this is what Dr. Miller believes about it.
Absolutely correct.
Well, get Rebecca Ross's book, because she has found out who did it, and I just wish everyone would get her book, because you know how wily the serpent is.
Well, Janelle, I tell you what, I'm going to order that book as soon as I get off the air. Dr. Miller, thanks, Janelle, so much for your phone call. I really appreciate you calling. Okay, Dr. Miller, we got just a couple of minutes left. What do you want to say? How do you want to close this? I mean, you've had a huge divergence as far as different types of calls today. What do you want to leave? What hope do you want to leave the folks with? I mean, we can't believe that we're all going to have to go to underground shelters or we're all going to die.
Gotcha. So it was my great-grandfather in a Swiss lodge that told Rudolf Steiner, he said, quote, "We are no longer at war in the physical world, that if we wish to change this world, we change ourselves and the world changes with us. One step at a time. While I'm too old to probably save this world, I'm absolutely going to walk my talk so that my daughter learns how to do it. The children are watching us. we need and have a fiduciary responsibility for making certain that they are taught correctly, have their own values. They're going to be the ones that save this earth.
Thank you so much for your closing comments. I want to thank you so much for being on with me today. I also want to thank Dr. Coach David Dobbenmeyer for being on and Pastor Rodney Howard-Brown for calling in and, conversing with us on this. And I want people to realize that what we talked about earlier in the second hour about how we'll be going and meeting up in Washington, D.C. in July and having a meeting up there right beside the Capitol building with Rodney Howard-Brown. I really want to make that happen. Rodney Howard-Brown is going to be there. Coach is going to be there. I've committed to being there. I want you to go and tell your friends because we have to stand in the aggregate. We've got to stand and believe that God could change things, that He's still in control. And I believe just as Dr. Miller just said that we have to change internally. When we change internally, we can actually change the world.